Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're joined by a truly inspiring guest, LeShav Dilraj, the voice and leadership behind Megazone Radio. From managing the station to taking over the airwaves, he's become a driving force in modern radio. In this interview, we dig into his journey, the behind the scenes of radio life, and the lessons he's learned along the way. You don't want to miss this. Let's get started. How are you?
I'm good, Sid. How are you doing?
Great, man. I'm really excited to be getting to know you. And my opening question to you is, what inspired you to join radio broadcasting, and how did your journey with Megazone Radio begin?
The first question seems like the toughest question to answer. I don't really know. So radio, I think it was. I was a very shy child growing up, and very much an introvert. Didn't speak a lot. Didn't have a lot of friends growing up. Um, and so when I finished school and I went to university, I went into the marketing field and I did BCom marketing at UKZN, and I was very bored with my degree. That's not fair to those who do marketing, right? It's an exciting degree,
Hmm.
but I was very bored with it, and
Hmm.
I was looking for an opportunity to reinvent myself. So for me, it was a lot of wanting to get into television, wanting to get into TV. At that time, Eastern Mosaic was a big show on SABC, and I think every Indian presenter wanted. That was like the epitome of being a presenter, was being an Eastern Mosaic presenter.
Hmm.
So I tried to get my foot into the door in television by going to my university production office, where they had a little TV studio there, and they would have interns that would basically do services at the studio. So I wanted to get involved with that, and I approached the guy, and I was quickly declined because I was not a media or broadcasting or journalism student for that matter. What he told me was, he gave me some advice. He said, the way you could get involved with us is if you come to us and say, look, I've got some kind of background in media and I can contribute somehow. So he said, look, go to your local community radio station, chat to them, see if you can do some shadowing, get some experience, like just a week or two, just something to put on your CV, and then you can come back to us and we can relook at your application. So I did that. I went to my local radio station, which was Hindwani at the time, and I approached them and I asked them if I could shadow a presenter for a week or 2 weeks, to which they allowed me to, and I sat in with Anusha Ramutar, now Anusha Dilraj Khan, on her show, and after 2 weeks of sitting in the studio and speaking a little bit on air, the manager came to me and he's like, look, you've got a good voice and you've got a good radio presence. Would you like to do a radio show? And I was like, look, this is not what I wanted to do. Radio is not my thing. I want to do TV. But I'll give it a shot. And so he gave me a once a week show. It was a 1 hour show and it was a youth show. So it was between 3 and 4 on a Tuesday, and that was it. And it was meant to be like a hard-hitting talk show kind of vibe. Which doesn't really fit my style, but I tried. And from there, it kind of morphed into more of an entertainment kind of show. And it spiraled from there, because then I got offered to do drive shows, I got offered to do breakfast shows, I got offered to do weekend breakfast shows, which is the biggest show at the station. And I just kind of fell into radio. It became a comfortable zone for me, where I felt like I had the ability to express myself and to be this character that I wanted to be, not that introverted child that I was before. So radio kind of gave me that outlet, even though it wasn't intended to be radio. It kind of gave me that outlet to be this person. And obviously from there, many opportunities open up, doing voiceovers and then doing drama. I did radio drama with the SABC for about 7 years, Lotus FM drama on Sunshine Mall, and I did Othello. I did over 20 dramas with SABC. From there, how did I get to Megazone? That is also another story, because so when I left Radio Hindwani, I left Hindwani to join Megazone Hit Radio, which was Megazone's only station at the time. It was an English station. It played only English music. And when I joined Megazone, I came with knowledge of Indian radio. So I approached my boss, Vishal Maharaj, and I gave him the idea of creating a Bollywood station, an Indian radio station. Because at the time, what was happening was SABC had mandated that all their radio stations played 90% local music. So stations like Lotus were suffering with listeners. Hindwani was doing nothing to pick those up. And so we saw a gap in the market, a gap for an entertainment radio station that serves the Indian community. And that was the birth of Megazone Bollywood. And that's how I came to be the station manager of the station when I was just 21 years old. So we created the station, we put it live, and it flew from there. So, since then we've acquired our FM license. We are fully registered with ICASA, with the National Association of Broadcasters. We are part of the Advertising Regulatory Board. So I'm proud to say that, even though I'm a radio presenter, I was a part of building Megazone Bollywood 104.8 FM. And for me, that's my proudest accomplishment. So that's how I got into radio, just to answer your
Wow.
question.
Yeah. As both a manager and presenter, how do you balance the creative side of radio with the business and operational demands?
Oh, it's difficult and it's very different. People assume that because you start off on air that you understand radio, and there's just so much more to it. There's so much more that goes on in the background. So much of my day is broken up with it's a very half a very boring day with a lot of admin and a lot of writing and numbers and spreadsheets. And then the other half of the day is the fun part, is the radio show, and it's the content, and it's the guests, and it's the interviews, and it's the listeners. So balancing that is kind of difficult because you kind of have to put yourself in two different mind frames throughout the day. I do a daily show. So in the morning, it's manager hat on, and in the afternoons, it's radio presenter, But I think having a good understanding of how things work in the background also helps you to be a good radio presenter, because you know what the aim of the station is, what the aim of every broadcast is. If we're doing something on radio, why are we doing that thing? And what is the benefit to the station, or what is the cost to the station? And it's understanding and thinking of things from a business point of view that also helps shape the way I do my show on air. So yeah, it might be, switching in between characters, but those characters kind of have a relationship with each other,
All right. Okay, I have a comment for you in the audience. So over here, if you'd like to see it here, this is from @Jitin Rishika. Hi, LeShav. Your experience on radio thus far?
My experience in radio thus far. So it's been a journey. Like, I feel like, I don't think I'm the best radio presenter ever. And I think every day we are learning, we are listening to other radio presenters, and we're learning from them, and other people learn from us. And it is a very adaptive environment to be in, because what worked 5 years ago I started in radio 13 years ago, right? So what worked 13 years ago, what was radio 13 years ago is not what radio is now. Radio 13 years ago, we were announcers, and we had to have really nice, deep voices, and we had to talk with this voice. And now radio has changed. It's all about personality. It's all about who you are, talking about your experiences, and being a human being behind the mic. So I think, yeah, it's changed, and it's constantly evolving.
What has been the most memorable moment for guests on your show so far?
It's really hard to say. I've had so many amazing guests, so many amazing people. We were talking before we started the live, and I told you that being on radio, being in a radio station like this, I don't really get to choose who I want as a guest on my show. I kind of get assigned people, and I've got to make the interview work. Sometimes it's a politician, sometimes it's a controversial figure in society, sometimes it's an influencer, sometimes it's a celebrity, sometimes it's a Bollywood star. Sometimes we've got Govinda in the studio. So it's very hard to pick and pinpoint one particular guest or artist. But I would say that, I've had the pleasure of interviewing many celebrities from CTV, Star Plus, even Bollywood. And I think every single one of those guests sticks out in my mind.
Okay, so you can't really pick one favorite.
Very difficult.
All right. How do you keep your content fresh and engaging for your listeners in such a competitive radio landscape?
So I do a drive time radio show. My concept of my show is, when you're driving home, you've had a day at work, and you've been scrolling social media here and there, when you have a few minutes, or WhatsApp statuses or whatever, but you haven't really been caught up on the day. Now, my aim in the way I present my content is to kind of infotain people, so to inform them in an entertaining way, and that's how I keep it fresh. I don't prep my show a day in advance or 10 hours in advance. My show is prepped an hour in advance, so it's very topical. It's what's currently happening, what's currently trending, what are the stories that people are talking about, and then injecting humor into that. Because it's one thing regurgitating information, but it's about how do you how do you relay that information to people so that they absorb it, and so that they are. My whole aim is to get people to interact back with me. So it's how do I present that to them and then give them options to contribute to my topic and what I'm talking about. So it is a bit of social engineering. It's understanding how people think. It's understanding how to prompt people. But like I said, radio is changing all the time. So what worked yesterday might not work tomorrow, and we've got to look at what is happening in the landscape. Is it, COVID-19 changed the way people think as well. So it's always evolving. It's ever changing.
What qualities do you believe make a great radio presenter in today's media world?
So back in the day, it was authoritative presenting, and when I first
Okay.
started on, told that we are not personalities, we are announcers, and
Oh,
that kind of stuck with me a long time, and that's something that I try to get rid of now. When I train new people, is that you are not a robot talking, you are a personality, and I think what makes a good radio personality is somebody who can bring that personality out. People like to talk and engage with people. And if you can be a person behind the mic, if you can have emotions and if you can have opinions, I think that makes a great radio presenter. And you might have people who are from an old school thought of radio who will say that is completely wrong. They'll probably listen to this and say that is completely wrong. But it's different. It's a different style of radio. And that's the kind of style that we adopt at Megazone Bollywood, is not to have an authoritative person. It's to have personalities behind the mic. And so I think if you are able to bring out your personality, if you are able to inject humor into that personality, then you're a great radio presenter.
can you share some behind the scenes insights about what goes into producing a successful radio show?
So much. People hear a radio show and often think that it's easy and anyone can do it. Anyone can do it, but there's a lot that goes behind it. We are in a live setting, and when you're live, anything can go wrong. Sometimes a guest is running a little bit late. Sometimes
Yeah.
the screen freezes on us, and it's how you adapt to those things that are going wrong in the situation, that kind of that changes the perception of the listener. Sometimes the listener can hear that a show is going completely wrong, but sometimes the show can go wrong and a listener is none the wiser because of the way that you can come out of it, the way that you can the way that you can the way that you can what's the word, recover from that situation. There's it's not just the music that we play, it's the content that we talk about. So for me, when I produce a radio show and I have a piece of content that I'm going to talk about, let's say it's a topical news story, I don't just look at the story. I take the story. I first have to verify if the story is true, if it's correct. And for that, we've got many sources. Once we verify a story is true, then we look at, okay, how do we integrate that into our show? So it's not just about coming on air and saying, okay, guys, so this is the story right now. It's about segueing. How do we segue from one story to another? And how do we then take that story and then make it an engageable story as well? So it could just be, a radio DJ who's doing a nighttime club show, playing music and mixing live. It depends what the show demands. But when you're doing a drive show, and it's all about content and it's all about engaging listeners, then it's a lot of social engineering that's involved. So even though a listener might listen to a link that is 2 minutes long, it's a piece of talking that's 2 minutes long, and it might be a fleeting listen for them. But a lot of work has gone into that 2 minutes. We've planned out strategically how we're starting that link, how we are filling that link, and then how we're going to segue that into engagement topics. So there is a lot that goes into it, but obviously when you're practiced and when you've been doing it for 13 years, it kind of becomes,
All right. How has Megazone Radio adapted to the rise of digital platforms, podcasts, and streaming services?
Well, we looked at, so radio is the oldest form of media, of broadcasting, right? Radio was first during the war, and it was invented as a method for people to communicate with the soldiers that were out in the war. And that kind of morphed into entertainment platform, right? But how do we know that radio is still relevant in 2025, and how do we keep it relevant in 2025? Because we are living in a world of, as you said, people are streaming things on demand. There's apps, it's digital now, and people are accustomed to content and media on demand. We live in a world of Netflix, of Showmax. Now, we at Megazone Radio, we looked at either one of two strategies, right? strategy one was we could create a station that plays everything and tries to speak to a very wide demographic, or we could look at creating niche stations that speak to niche demographics. And we went with the latter because we realized that people don't want a radio station to dictate to them what kind of music they should be listening to. They know what kind of music they want to be listening to. They don't want to tune into a station and say, okay, now it's Bollywood, okay, now it's English, okay, now it's Amapiano. They know, I want to listen to Bollywood music, I want to listen to my Amapiano music, I want to listen to EDM music. And so Megazone Radio took that concept and we ran with it. So Megazone Radio has 12 radio stations on our platform. If you go to megazone.fm, you will see all 12 radio stations on our platform, and each one of those stations speaks to a niche demographic that we've identified. So we've got down to K-pop, we've got a Korean radio station, we've got a South Indian radio station, we've got Diamond FM, which is our local Amapiano station. So we've got stations that speak to many different demographics, and we've created an app that can house all these stations and be a hub for Megazone Radio. So as much as Megazone Bollywood is a conventional radio station, it is on 104.8 FM. You can pick it up in your cars. COVID-19 has kind of taught people that you can consume radio online. You can consume radio through an app. You can consume audiobooks through an app. And so we saw an upsurge in our app usage during the time. And so we started injecting features into that app where you could not only listen live, but you could also rewind. If you want to listen to a podcast that you missed or an interview that you missed, it's available on the app. Our news, if you missed a news bulletin, news is updated in real time on the app. So our journalists, our team is sitting constantly updating that app and making sure that that is a hub for our listeners to be on, that they never have to leave. They can even enter competitions on that app. So we've taken radio and we've kind of revolutionized it and said, how can we make it relevant in 2025? And I think that Megazone Radio is one of the few stations who have successfully done that and have successfully created a bouquet of stations that speak to niche demographics. And I think in the world of online demand and streaming on demand and media on demand, people kind of appreciate that.
What role do you feel radio still plays in connecting communities, especially in South Africa?
So radio has been very much part of an Indian household. I know growing up, the radio was always on. It was a source of information. It was a source of recipes. It was also a source of communication, which is something that is it's very niche to South Africa. And people don't realize how niche that concept is to South Africa. Across the world, people don't use radio as a method of communication with each other, whereas in South Africa, they do. In South Africa, you'll hear aunties, uncles picking up the phone, WhatsApping our studio to send a message to their family who's in Australia, or to send a message to even are we back?
Okay, you're back on.
Okay, I do apologize. I got a call and my phone just spazzed out on me.
All right, my question to you was, what role do you feel radio still plays in connecting communities, especially in South Africa?
Yeah, so I was saying, in South Africa, it's a very niche concept that people use radio to communicate with each other and communities. And we still find that. I mean, even though you might think radio is an old platform and people don't listen to radio, and a lot of people will say they don't listen to radio anymore, we've got a very, very loyal following of people. And what they use radio for is not just to keep them entertained and informed, but to keep them communal with their community, to keep them engaged with their communities. What we find also is a lot of people who move away from South Africa will tune in to South African radio to keep in touch with their families. And this is still something that we see in 2025, which is absolutely amazing. Even in the world of social media and in the world of picking up a WhatsApp call and talking to people across the world, people still find a use and a joy in using radio. And I think that's, it really puts a smile on people's faces when they are able to send a message to their family across the world via radio station. And we are happy to facilitate that here at Megazone.
All right. Are there any exciting upcoming projects, shows, or changes at Megazone Radio that listeners should look forward to?
Absolutely. Megazone Radio has so many things going on at the moment, especially Megazone Bollywood. Our December period is just crazy. I will say, check out our social media to see what we're doing and where we are, because off the top of my head, I can't even tell you. We just recently had our very first Salma Awards, which we are very proud of, which is the South African Local Music Awards. So Megazone Bollywood was never a station that was intended to promote local artists. But in our journey in broadcasting, what we found is that in working with artists and working with other radio stations, there are so many barriers to entry in another radio station, in SABC radio stations and things like that, that we found that our local South African artists are very ignored. They were never subsidized. They were never given training. And so this year was the first year that we decided to embark on the South African Local Music Awards, or the SALMA Awards, which is a Megazone Radio product. We had, very proud to say, we had over 60 artists, over 120 tracks that were nominated, and we just did our countdown last week, Saturday. So look, we're looking at doing that next year, even bigger and better, maybe as a live event. But in the coming year, we're also looking at doing a lot more events. So Megazone Radio is looking to get out there more in our community, the communities that we serve, Phoenix, Tongaat, Umhlanga. I will say, look out for us. We're coming to you soon.
All right. My final question to you is, what advice would you give to young people who dream of entering the radio or entertainment industry?
I would say, don't give up. It's very easy to kind of lose all hope when opportunities don't come knocking. I knocked on hundreds of doors before people opened them and let me in. It is a difficult industry to get into. And what I would say is that you need to put yourself out there. You need to create a demo of yourself, okay? If you want to be in radio, the number one thing you got to do is create a demo. And the way you do that is you'll create a 2-minute piece of you talking, of you presenting like you would actually present a radio show. Don't put on a voice. Don't put on an accent. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. However, be a version of yourself, a different version of yourself that is of the person that you want to be, the public figure. So people always say, don't be fake on radio. I agree, don't be fake on radio, but definitely develop a character, develop an alter ego. And that's something that I've done. People will often hear my show and then they'll meet me in person and say, oh, but you're so shy in person. And it's not that, it's that when that microphone comes on, there's an alter ego that kind of kicks in and that character switches on. And I would say, if you're looking to get into radio, develop that radio character. It doesn't have to be, it must not be a different person. It has to be a version of you. But it's a version of you that is slightly better. It's a version of you that you are able to portray slightly better on radio. And you will find comfort in that, because you find comfort in switching on that character and being that character when you get onto radio. But I think my final advice to those who want to get into radio is certainly listen to radio. Listen to other people doing radio. You can never copy another person. You can never imitate someone's style, but you can take inspiration from people. I've taken a lot of inspiration from many radio presenters all over South Africa. People, people like, we're very sad to hear the losing of Zakia Ahmed Siddiqui, was somebody that I grew up listening to when I was a child, and has definitely shaped the way I present my shows, because I've listened to her and I've taken things from her and I've implemented it in the way I present. So listen to other radio presenters. Take tidbits from them. Pick up skills, pick up styles of presenting, and then find your own style. Because when you find your own style, then you become a successful presenter.
All I got to say is thanks so much for your time, and hopefully we can catch up again in the future.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on today, Sid. And definitely again sometime soon.
Thanks.